having your own risk management methodology slash risk-based thinking philosophy chatbot is a must for any organization. Because if you were to go into OpenAI, Gemini, or Claude public models and ask on their public website, even with the pro subscription, ask what is risk management, they would all give you consistently the same answer. Risk management is the process of identifying, assessing, and controlling, mitigating, or whatever risks. And that's because that's the popular opinion. And as it turns out, for most of the risk management applications, the popular opinion is not particularly helpful because, or at least it's not going to differentiate your risk management team from your competitor's risk management team. So you want to have a chatbot which is grounded. You want to have a risk management advisor which is grounded in your own risk philosophy, whatever that is. And on the right, you can see my philosophy, where to me, risk management is not about identifying, assessing, and controlling and mitigating risks at all. To me, risk management is about analyzing uncertainties before making any important decisions or making operational or technical investment choices. And that's understanding the effect uncertainty has on the business outcomes, on the choices, on the trade-off between risk and reward. And that comes with the full uncertainty, not just the downside, but also the upside. That is why for the last, I think, 15 years, I have been an avid user of model risk and a big fan of model risk. And at the moment, I'm a big fan of Tamara. I'm using it every week at work because it brings the full distribution to the conversation. And it's interesting. I've just recently started piloting real options valuation methodology for our corporate strategy. And by switching from a deterministic single average-based scenario to a stochastic scenario with different distributions on different inputs, and some of the probabilistic scenarios, something may happen with 70% probability and not happen with 30% probability, adding that increased the company valuation in kind of my rough back of the napkin estimates, increased or had the potential to increase the company valuation by like 30%. That is huge. Like, it makes a huge difference to the conversations companies are having with financial advisors. So it's important to have a version of AI that is grounded in what you believe, because otherwise it will just give you the same answers it gives to everybody else, and that is not going to be helpful in differentiating your risk management. Nor will it, or unlikely will it, lead to some sort of conclusions or interesting observations. So let me quickly go through some of the fundamental things that I wanted to share today. First of all, AI, I think, is now squarely in our lives. Most large countries in the world are developing different AI models, and ironically, not everybody is as excited about AI. Somebody has more kind of positive energy or more positive attitude towards rollout of AI, and some countries are very nervous about it. European Union is a good example. We are getting all the latest, or most of the latest, publicly available models weeks, sometimes months later than US, for example. So that's an interesting situation where we are. And the other curious factor is that different vendors, Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI, Meta, Mistral, DeepSeek, they're all constantly coming up with the next best version of their LLM models. And it changes, the leadership board changes all the time. As of today, my personal preference for analyzing things is Google, but at work, in the corporate environment, so for personal life, I may use Google. In work, we use Anthropic most of the time. But this is only until the next model comes out, because I disliked how Google did math before, until the kind of only just the recent update. So that leadership board changes all the time, and I think the reality is that I personally have I think 2 corporate subscriptions and 3 personal subscriptions to the main models. And then, of course, I have my own version of LLMs designed specifically for my risk management tasks, both within the secure environment of the corporate world and as a publicly available set of tools. The other huge and great news is that every model is becoming cheaper and cheaper every day. OpenAI just announced an 80% drop in O3 pricing very recently. So this is huge opportunity. Basically, it costs very little to do complex risk analysis using AI now, which is exciting, because it started, and some of the newer, more thinking models, they're still really expensive, but the price constantly declining. And at the moment, we're talking about dollars and cents to perform in-depth risk identification using multiple AI agents working together. So we do live in a very exciting time. Another curious observation is that companies have already begun adopting AI in their business processes. And this year, 78% have claimed in the McKinsey survey that they've integrated AI in at least one business process. Fewer, only 16% claim that they've implemented across multiple functions, 5 or more. So there's clearly still a way to go. But I think this is a very powerful statistic for us, because I hope we, as risk managers or insurance managers, we are the kind of the front runners in AI adoption, because the whole premise of AI is built on probability theory. I mean, this is literally our domain. Like, if anybody should be excited about AI, I think it's the risk professionals. This is a good space for us to be in. And if you haven't started doing that yet, just start it tomorrow. And I'll show you a few examples today that will take 5 minutes to start. So it's not that complicated, and it's extremely exciting. And I'll be showing you some examples of what I'm using in our day-to-day work. The other side of this is that this is completely justified, because most of the models in different benchmarks are either approaching human baseline performance or have already exceeded human baseline performance. So it's, if anything, like even the worst of the models, they are probably equivalent to like a graduate position. We can all benefit from an extra graduate on our team. So it's really a no-brainer to start using different AIs. And even if your company doesn't have your own secure installation of AI, you can still use publicly available models by switching off the automatic learning and sharing your data and not using it for anything sensitive. There are so many risk tasks that are not confidential or sensitive that we can still perform amazing work in even publicly available models. Obviously, don't share anything sensitive, price related, forecast related, budget related. Don't do that unless you have your own secure environment. The other interesting observation is that most companies began to use it. Its performance is actually pretty good. The unfortunate reality, however, is that most people still use Gen AI for translations and email writing, which is not even the tip of the iceberg. That's not even the beginning of the potential below that, because AIs can read documents, can interpret documents, they can do amazing research, and they can create and run code to execute things that a language model cannot, which is amazing. So it basically opens up this door to an online environment for Python code execution, and that just expands the functionality quite significantly. So I think we will begin to see more and more mathematical and quantitative risk use of AI. Okay, next point is that I think we are still being a bit blindsided by the Gen AI revolution. We're not maybe appreciating the significance of what is happening. When people have asked, will AI affect their job? A large percentage of people were hesitant to say that it will, whether it will actually replace their job or it will change how their job is performed. So, for example, the first question is very easy. AI will change how your current job is performed in the next 5 years, and 20% said very likely. That is delusional, because it's 100%. Like there's not even a single shred of doubt. It will impact everybody's job on this call. Whether it will completely replace us, that's a different question. And it may or may not replace me. I don't know. I've already replaced a couple of math PhDs in my team. And I used to have 2 math PhDs. I didn't fire them. I moved to a different company where I needed 2 math PhDs, but I didn't have to hire new math PhDs because I now had an AI model that performed the same level of risk quantification that I've used in the past. And let me make this very clear. Every single calculation had an error in it. But so did human calculations before. And the only difference is that I could actually give feedback and correct the errors instantaneously in minutes and sometimes hours instead of days and weeks with humans. So it is without a doubt is going to have a huge impact on us as a profession. And I'm hoping your organizations are beginning to support you with education and reskilling. We are bringing training. We're rolling out different our corporate and secure AI, and we are upskilling our teams to start building little agents for the tasks that they need to perform repetitively and consistently. And even with that said, AI already generates significant value. At the moment, it's still small. Majority see less than 5% increase in revenue and less than 10% decrease in costs. I think, ironically, for risk, legal, and compliance, it's mainly the cost reduction that is the visible impact. Again, majority of the people see it less than 10% cost reduction. I think there's huge potential to see significant shifts in revenue generation and cost reductions. The graph on the right I like in particular because it showed a very interesting study, and I know it's one of many studies, so don't treat it as being conclusive. But it's curious. It's very curious. An organization conducted tests with physicians, with doctors, and they basically compared 3 sample groups. Doctors with their own existing knowledge base, textbooks and whatever's in their mind, and their typical access to whatever tools they normally use. And they show a distribution of performance of correct diagnosis. Then they've given ChatGPT a newer version, so it's a good one, to the same physicians, and they saw a slight improvement in the average performance, and then the distribution of the performance has increased as well. So the volatility has increased. So some of the underperformers started to perform even less. And that's, I mean, on average, there's a minor improvement. So you can easily argue that AI improves our work. But then what they did is they took the doctors out of the picture and just used AI for diagnosis. And that showed less volatility and a significantly higher average performance, which is pretty scary. So this is, I think, just the beginning of something we have to be excited about, because I think this is a huge opportunity. Now, that being said, AI is obviously not risk-free. First of all, some of the models actually requiring a huge amount of carbon emissions. So there will be a toll on power usage. There will be a toll on climate change. All that excitement comes at the cost. And hopefully we can use AI to reduce these risks more significantly than the risk that AI itself creates to the climate. Now, in terms of number of reported AI incidents, obviously there's a huge exponential growth, and this will only continue. It will spike significantly in all sorts of fake information, misleading information, fake videos, voices, and everything in between. It's a huge fraud risk, obviously. That being said, part of the problem is that people themselves are being complacent, and most completely underestimate risks. For example, here's an interesting statistic from McKinsey. They've asked, when you generate an output with AI, how often do you double check before copy pasting into an email and sending it to CFO for actions or for recommendations? And only 27% said they always double check it, and then 30% said they almost never double check it. Any of you who who had experience dealing with other offices or other departments and receiving information from them, I suspect you've kind of experienced that as well. So like most AI-generated messages, emails, reports, they're beginning to be kind of obvious. And it's also clear that some people just do not read the output before they send it out, because it's so clearly disconnected from the actual points that needed to be made. So don't make that mistake. The responsibility and the ownership is still on us. And all AI currently does is help us with this kind of time-consuming task by doing it a lot quicker and researching things that would have taken us days to do manually. So we're still responsible for what the final message says and how it looks. Do read it, do change it, do update it before sending out. And then, of course, there was a lot of excitement about Chinese models. That comes with some risks as well. There could be data privacy risks, there could be censorship risks. So all of these things are not risk-free. What I found interesting is that when people asked about risks, they completely misunderstand what the real issues are, and that is surprising. Because, for example, when people asked, so they've been asked over, I think, a year and a half, so 3 times, and you can see the trend is either going the significance, either the changing upwards or downwards, and some risks are perceived as more significant than others. And number one risk, according to the surveyed people, is of course hallucinations and inaccuracy. And so on the right, I wanted to ground this fear in some statistics. Basically, most latest models have about 1 to 1.5% hallucination rate, which is significant, but it's nothing compared to a human hallucination rate, which is about 34%. Obviously, again, these are not really apples to apples study comparisons, but you can what I'm trying to say is that we have other things to worry about than hallucination, because ultimately it's our responsibility anyway, and we should be double checking whatever AI generates as we would normally, because it's literally like receiving information from a junior colleague. So if somebody told you something in the office and it sounds off, surely you would double check that. You would ask somebody else. And it is no different with AI. In any point in time, I have about 3 or 4 windows open, and sometimes I just double check the facts in some other models, and then I would ask somebody if I can to verify that, some human expert as well. So interesting that hallucination and accuracy is still the biggest risk. What I think is really scary, and just again shows you how risk surveys are not useful, because people, I don't know what motivates them, but people kind of go for the sexy, whatever's recency bias, whatever's on the news, and they completely ignore the kind of the real huge risks, like environmental impact, political stability, national security, physical safety. These are huge risks, and they are they're so low, they're almost non-existent in this picture of this survey. So I think this is, again, just like World Economic Forum risk report is kind of significantly misclassifying, misjudging what the risk priorities are. So does this survey. I think it's curious, but I wouldn't use it for decision making. I think it's completely misrepresenting the actual underlying risks. Now, here's an interesting survey that I've been doing over the last few days. I've asked, and I think just under 100 people participated. I've asked them, what are the top 5 things that they wish were automated with Gen AI? And I think 3 items are sharing the first place. Number 1 is generating risk reports and translating messages for different audiences. So being able to take what the output of your risk analysis, take P80 or P90 and translate that into the language of the board, and or then translate it into the language of the audit committee or external auditor, or management or CFO for decision making. So that's number one. Number two is researching emerging risks and industry trends, and this is a very exciting tool that I'll be able to share with you. And then the final third in the first place is the quantitative risk modeling and Monte-Carlo simulation. So I think this is where, in the spirit of this conference, this is, I think, where the huge opportunity is, because historically, running Monte-Carlo simulations, even with simple and amazing tools like Model Risk, where you can literally select distributions and set up correlations and run simulations in Excel with your familiar interface and simple to understand buttons, even that was too much for many risk people to bear. So I think the Gen AI now really puts the bar lower, or puts the threshold, the knowledge threshold, much lower. So I think it opens a huge opportunity for us as risk professionals to use quantitative a lot more. So that's the intro. I don't see any of the questions because my screen is sharing this. I want to show you a few other things very quickly, and then I'll switch on to answering all your questions. So please type up the questions in the chat. I wanted to basically, now that we've set up the scene, I think AI is with us, hopefully for a very long time. It's amazing. It has a lot of risk, but nothing we as risk community can't deal with. And the solutions are just getting better and better. It's important to realize that the publicly available versions, with no tailoring, with no system prompt design, with no grounding in your local knowledge base and your methodology knowledge base, you have to realize that these publicly available models most of the time will give you wrong answers to risk management questions. So I'm not saying you have to use somebody else's, but you have to make an effort to ground your risk AI experience into something that you believe in. Because if you ask Gen AI, any publicly available model, how to assess risks, it will literally say, do a heat map, 1 to 3, 1 to 3 on the likelihood, 1 to 3 on the consequence. And that is assessment of risk, which of course is nonsense. It's completely useless. So we can do better than that. But for you to receive the right answer, you first have to ground your AI in the right framework. And that is time-consuming, but extremely rewarding and not that complicated. So I wanted to show a few things, and we'll be sharing the slides after the presentation. So you don't have to read all of this. You can enjoy reading it afterwards. But basically, we've built, as an organization, we've built a multi-agent model which does risk identification for us. We can put in the context, and the first agent, we call it enrichment agent. It literally converts your input into some sort of sensible kind of holistic description. And then 5 separate agents. One is the virtual CFO, one is the virtual ESG director, one is the virtual procurement director, one is the virtual head of legal and compliance, and one is the virtual head of operations. They go away and spend a couple of minutes going through different risk identification techniques. By the way, risk identification techniques that we as humans don't actually use that often, but we've tested 30 different techniques, and we found that 3 of them perform best with AI, even though in a typical risk interview or risk workshop, you would use completely different techniques. So they go and use these different techniques, constantly running and improving and identifying risks. And then another agent aggregates all of this and presents it in a nice web interface or an Excel or a PDF export. So that identifies risks so much deeper and more technical than I have ever seen in risk workshops. In risk workshops that takes weeks to perform. This is done in 2 minutes, and it produces amazing starting point to then investigate and kind of deep dive and understand what the risks are. The other application that we use is, I've obviously created a virtual me, a virtual risk management chatbot, which is grounded in all my articles, all my videos, my free risk management book, the guidelines that I have published, and lots of articles from the authors that I have a lot of respect for, including David Boyce, obviously. And then when I need to ask a risk management question, like for example, how do I quantify risks for this decision or this project, it will give me a response which is much more practical and useful and pragmatic than a typical LLM. I don't know if you've ever asked a typical LLM, like, what's the future of risk management AI? And it will talk about some like nonsense, like real life data feed monitoring. It goes like super hypothetical and just crazy into the space, when in reality, we should be automating the routine, boring tasks that everybody's doing today, not something that nobody is doing today. So we don't need to jump from nothing to space. We need to at least jump from nothing to automating, the most annoying tasks that we have today. The other point is that I use AI models. Obviously, when I say AI models and the QR code, you can actually scan and try. I think this has access to like 10 different AI tools that I use for different purposes. But one of the most useful things is I could load a procedure in the document and say, identify opportunities for integrating risk analysis and probability thinking and decision analysis, and ways to minimize and overcome cognitive biases inside this business process, and it will identify opportunities. So that's an exciting application because it allows it allows AI to read documents and not just act as a conversational buddy with yourself, but actually interpret information from inside the document. Now, the next application is also something very exciting that we've built. It's a multi-agent model that basically researches for emerging risks and threats and trends and changes in the overall regulatory environment or the market demand. So you put in the company name and the location and the industry, and then the enrichment agent, a different enrichment agent, goes about and searches the public domain to build a business model for that company. The business model that explains, what are the products, where do they sell, what regulatory environment, what countries they operate in, how many employees, whatever's available on that company. And then that is used to research substitution, new market entrants, demand fluctuations, regulatory environment, basically like a whole huge list of emerging risks, which takes less than a minute to generate, and it reads through a lot of research that a human risk manager can obviously do, but it will just take weeks to do it. So I think that's where the exciting opportunity is. And then, of course, the final application. So I've just touched on like the top 5 things that we're doing today. We are combining different agents together from a perfect description agent, like whatever you usually get like different risk messages from around the company, and they're all in different language. They're all some of them are causes, some of the consequences, some are not even risks. Some are just negative controls. There is just so much chaos in risk communication, and I have an agent that can take whatever that user input is and translate it into like a decent risk description that you can use then for your internal databases, and you can link to assumptions in models and simulate the effect of these risks on cash flows and NPVs and whatever we're doing. So very exciting times, lots of different applications, and I shall now switch to answer your questions.